How's everybody doing today? Good? All right. We ready for some more 3DF and good fun? I hope so. I like that. So this is what we're going to talk about today. As you guys know, your skill check is due when? Saturday. Skill check Saturday, right? So make sure by midnight all those skill checks have to be turned in. Again, waiting until Saturday to start working on them, not such a good idea. Do a little bit at a time. It's much easier that way. In terms of your weekly turn-in, when's that? Monday is your weekly turn-in. And the weekly turn-in, again, is the culmination of everything we learned this week, which means we're going to be including some blockouts. You guys are going to be blocking out several models. And we are also going to be modeling 2 assets, our first attempt to try to actually build something the way it is really built. And then from here forward, everything that we build is going to be building it the way it should be built. So that blockout or primitive build stage is sort of just to get you used to the tools, get you used to recognizing shape and form, manipulating polygons a little bit, just to try to hit those shapes and forms. But then we move into actual modeling. And so again, the part of the turn-in for this week will be your first run at 2 models. So the good news is you'll have a chance to build something and not get penalized for it in terms of your grade if it doesn't turn out so great. So it's a good first run at something. So make sure you do that part because it's going to make a big difference for you, because we're going to give you some feedback on that, even though it's a practice run, so that you will be more successful with your next turn-in, which will be the following Monday. But it's a good chance to take your first look at modeling and get some stuff done. As always, make sure you're watching the turn-in procedure videos. The turn-in procedure videos are specifically for the weekly turn-in. So if you watch that video, you're going to do better with your turn-in. So make sure you're watching it. And as with all of the videos for this class, great idea to have a notebook out and jot down some key stuff that we talk about. And of course, you don't want to be doing anything else while you're watching the videos. While you're watching TV, while you're playing video games, while you're talking to a friend, bad time to be watching videos because the retention is very poor. So make sure you're on those and paying close attention to what we're asking for, and then that's just going to yield a better result for you. And that's what you want. That's what I want also. So we can work together towards that. Today we're going to be talking about the introduction of the big 3 tools. And that is the insert edge loop tool. We're going to be talking about the multi-cut tool and the extrude tool. With these 3, you can build just about anything. So once you know how to do these, you're going to be all set. You're going to need to practice, of course. That's always a thing. But knowing how to use those tools is key. We are also going to delve into some concepts of modeling in terms of build it like it's built, building things in pieces. How do I know how many pieces to build something from? So we're going to cover all that information so that you have what you need to successfully start modeling. So you should have everything you need at this point. Again, as with everything, practice makes perfect, so you want to practice as much as you can because that's what makes the difference in terms of your level of success. So before we get started, though, any quick questions on skill checks or weekly turn-ins, because those are the 2 things on the docket, and I'm not going to see you again. Oh, no, I'll see you before the weekly turn-in. I'll see you on Monday, but I won't see you before the skill checks. If you've got a question for me on those, this would be your window of opportunity to hit that. Anything out there on the skill check? My digital friends, you have anything for me? No. Yeah, I got it. I'm jigging that grape number 8 worm, and I'm not getting any bites. All right. It is early. You know what? But you got to get fired up early because it's just going to get more awesome from there. What's the big 3? The big 3 tool. Oh my. All right. So we're going to start off with a little bit of vocabulary. We're always trying to stick some vocab in there, and it's periwinkle colored when you see it. In terms of vocabulary, these are the things that are on your self-grade document. Remember we talked about there's a document to help you make sure you're doing everything you need to do for your weekly turn-ins? Well, the elements that are on there are based on the vocabulary things we talk about. So built-in parts, you will see this. Did you build this object in the correct number of parts? And what I'd like you to do is realize that when we're building things, the mantra of the modeler is build it like it's built. So what you want to do is literally take a look at the object and figure out, well, if I had to actually really make this thing, how many pieces would it take to make it? So we're understanding the object before we build it. So building in parts becomes very important, and we're going to delve more detail-wise into that, but I wanted to get that concept out there for you. All right, so let's get into build things in parts. The idea of build things in parts is objects in the real world are made from parts, so we need to build objects in parts too, because we're trying to replicate reality as closely as possible. So how do I figure out how many parts to make something out of? Well, we have a couple of guides for you. Number one guide on how do I determine how many pieces something needs to be made of. Look for different materials. Any object you look at, look for where are there different materials, and that's your indication that needs to be a separate piece, because the material behaves differently. It might function in terms of its function within the object. It might be, it's going to definitely have a different texture on it, and maybe that material reacts differently to light. So as a result of all of those things, that's going to have to be a separate piece. So we're looking for separate materials. Who can, looking at this lovely fast food dinette set, name for me one material that is involved with that object? Who can tell me one of them? Yeah, go ahead. Definitely metal, right? I've got this sort of tubular metal design here, and that's not a California term. I've got this tubular metal design in here that offers the overall support of the structure that holds up the seats. So that's metal. So I've got that as a material. That's going to be a separate piece. Go ahead. Wood, absolutely, or whatever they made this out of. You know, could be wood, could be not. But in terms of this sort of laminate-looking material here, that is a separate material. It's not metal. So therefore, that's going to have to be a separate piece as well, right? Okay, so that's two. Any other pieces? Yeah, way in the back.
The rubber edging.
The rubber edging, right? Absolutely. There's a little bit of material here on the edge of the table and on the edge of the chairs, and that keeps the wood or whatever it is from splintering and like digging into your body when you're sitting there, right? So it sort of softens those edges, makes it a bit more comfortable. Again, a different material, a different feel, therefore that needs to be a separate piece. So we're looking at least 3 pieces already. Does that make sense? So in terms of this object and figuring out how many pieces should I build it out of, again, you have to kind of study the object and think about it, all right? Now, something you may not have thought of, you know, these little metal feet here that attach to the bottom of the table, they typically have a little bit of rubberized material on the end of them so that they don't slide as much, right? Because fast food places typically have tile as a flooring because that's easier to clean. So as a result, they put a little bit of rubber sort of feet on the bottom of those feet to keep it from sliding around. So again, another piece. But in understanding the object, I'm going to build it out of the right number of pieces, and I'm going to do a better job of building it because I know what it does and why. Does that make sense? And this comes long before you even start building it. We're going to talk all about taking a look at an object and analyzing it long before you start trying to actually physically model it. And you might think, oh, well, that's going to make the whole process slower. To be honest with you, that actually makes it faster because if you've thought about it in advance, you've already started to think about where the problems are going to be and come up with some solutions. And so when you finally do sit down on the machine because you understand the thing you're trying to build, you're going to build it much, much faster because there's no questions. There aren't any variables. You know the answers to these things. Does that make sense? A little bit? Okay, good. So there is a speed in understanding, and that's why it's an important part of the modeling. All right. Another idea, oh, incidentally, any questions on materials? The whole idea that I need to look at an object to figure out what it's made of, and that helps me figure out the number of pieces. Anybody in my digital land? That makes sense?
I think I hear snoring.
Yeah.
All good.
Oh, there we go. All right. Yeah, every once in a while, just give them a little poke. Poke, poke. All right. Next thing, pieces, build things in pieces. Oh, go ahead, right in the back.
So whenever you're going to build these models, that's whenever you collaborate with your group, find out how detailed their one is. Is that correct?
That's an excellent question, but not so much. Typically what happens is, and this is probably the most important thing when it comes to anything in 3D, which is why I'm so glad you asked that question. How do you figure out what you need? And this sort of is an all-encompassing blanket for all of 3D. The very first thing you ask yourself, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're modeling, rigging, animating, compositing, it doesn't make any difference. What do I need this thing to do? That is the first and foremost important question you ask yourself. What do I need this thing to do? Because if you know what its purpose is, then you can do a much better job of building exactly what you need, and you don't waste time building stuff that you don't. Does that make sense? So it is entirely dependent on how it needs to be made. And what happens is you will be meeting with your leads on whatever discipline you're working on, and they will let you know, this is a game asset, we need this many polys, we want this size textures, you know, don't go over this amount, make sure it works well with this, I need that to function, I need this to function. So you're going to get some instructions from your leads, which you will very carefully write down, because if you miss any of those, you're in a lot of trouble. Okay? The other place that you get a lot of that information from are your storyboards. And whether you're talking about a movie or whether you're talking about a video game, you're still going to get boards that describe what's going to be happening. Based on what you see in those boards, based on the technical information you get from your leads, that's how you figure out, what do I need this thing to do? And that's how you make excellent decisions on the use of your time and where you build detail and where you don't, and to what degree. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a culmination of things, and it's a lot of thinking and being smart, because it will save you a tremendous amount of time and effort. Make sense? That's an awesome question, and I'm so glad you asked that. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So basically, it's also whether it's going to be a static piece in the background or how functional it is.
Absolutely, and again, that's a storyboard-related question, because when you look at your boards and you say, okay, I'm looking at this scene, I can see where this object is going to be, therefore, you know, it's in the background, I really don't have to labor over it. I can, you know, make sure it's doing what I need it to do and no more. You know, just like when you're building a movie set, you don't build the interior of every building on the movie set. If you never go inside that building, you don't build the interior. That is a waste of time, effort, and money. Does that make sense? Because this is entertainment. If you were building a for real car, right, and they do this, they build 3D examples of cars. They build the entire car, every nut and every bolt built on the computer before they go to production with this thing. Then you are building a real object that we need to see every single piece of. Therefore, you cannot skimp on anything. Does that make sense? Because if that bolt's the wrong size or that panel's in the wrong place, it doesn't go together. The production will fail. When we're talking about entertainment, which is the field predominantly we'll be working in, it doesn't matter. You know, no one's going to get hurt if we make the bolts a little too big. You know what I mean? Everybody's safe. It's just funny or exciting or whatever the movie or the game is supposed to be. Does that make sense? So thank you for playing. So again, you can see, what do I need this to do? Immediately helps you start figuring out the answers to your own questions, and it gives you the opportunity to think of new, more in-depth questions to ask so that you'll make continued smart decisions. Make sense? Awesome. Thank you. Again, thank you. That's a great question. So back to building in pieces. How do I figure out how many pieces to build something out of? Look at the object and see, are there pieces of this thing? So if I look at the object and I say, well, again, build it like it's built. If I look at this chair, let's just take a look at the back of the chair. You can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces to build just the back of this chair. Okay, then when I model it, guess how many pieces I'm going to build it out of? 5, right? Because that's what I see. Again, if something can be glued together, nailed together, soldered together, welded, you know, whatever you got to do to bring these pieces together. If they are separate pieces in the real thing, it should be separate pieces in the real thing, the thing that you're modeling, right? Because we're going for realism. Does that make sense? Hell yeah? Okay, so we've got look for materials, and we've got look for the way pieces actually really attach. So those are 2 guides that can help us figure out how many pieces to make something out of. The third little bit of this puzzle, animation. If things move, they're going to have to be separate pieces. So again, you got to think about, what do I need this thing to do? and do those things move? So for example, if I'm working for Nerf and I'm showing off this gun and all the cool stuff it can do, and it's going to come apart and I need to show off every little piece, sort of an exploded view of it, you betcha I'm going to be modeling the spring that makes that thing work, even though I can't see it from this reference image. Does that make sense? I need to show that spring. That is an integral part of this weapon, and if I'm trying to show off how it works inside and out, I'm going to have to build that. But if I'm just building the outside of this thing, again, I need pieces to move. Therefore, in terms of movement, this chamber here, it rotates, right? That thing turns to load the next dart. That's going to have to be a separate piece. This trigger depresses. That's what launches the Nerf dart, right? So that's going to have to be a separate piece. This is the cocking mechanism here. That's where the spring is. I'm going to have to pull that back to lock the spring into position to be able to fire the dart. Therefore, that piece is going to have to move. Does that make sense? So all of those are definitely going to have to move. All of those are definitely going to have to be separate pieces. Now, to bring your question into the fold, well, what if the Nerf gun is way in the background? It doesn't have to function, and I'm just seeing it laying on a desktop. Maybe those pieces don't have to move at all because no one's ever going to interact with it and they don't have to move. Does that make sense? That totally changes the way I model that thing. Make sense? Hell yeah? Okay, great. So in terms of your world and the stuff that we're building, if you remember, we're going to be building objects and we're going to be pretty darn close to the stuff we're building, right? Does that make sense? So since we're showing these things front and center in front of the camera, hero assets, if you will, we're going to have to do a good job on detail. Does that make sense? Okay, so again, what do I need it to do? Dictates how you go about doing it. Make sense? Okay. All right. Any questions on building in parts, that whole idea? That is definitely one of the big ticket items we're trying to try to hit on with our week 1 turn-in, and definitely turn-ins following that. No? Okay. All right, so let's talk about component manipulation. In terms of component manipulation, we have already discovered that if I grab a vertex and I move it, I change the edge flow, or the way the edges move across the surface of a piece of geometry. So I can keep moving vertices, and that will keep moving edges, and I can change the edge flow, the way the edges move across the surface of the geometry. I can also move those components to change the shape of the object. If any of you got down to the level 4, remember when we were moving vertices and stuff in the edge flow activity? If you got down to the cubes at the bottom, we were not just changing edge flow, we were changing shape and form in our object when we were moving those components around, because we were affecting a 3D entity at that point, and we were getting more depth information. And we did that by using the tools in the toolbox to change the shape of the object. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do some of that as well. We're going to be moving vertices again. We're going to be moving edges again. But this time, we're not just adjusting the edge flow, but we are going to be adjusting the shape and the form of the object by manipulating the components. So we're going to do an activity. So what's the first thing I need to do? Set your project to the activity file folder. This is what we're going to work on. And you're going to be looking for this activity here. So I hit escape. I minimize my little slides, and we go find Maya. Where are you, Maya? Here you are. I'm going to have to adjust its size a little bit. And that will magically give me my interface back. There we go. And please, my digital friends, let me know if you can't see the entirety of Maya's interface when I'm making adjustments here, because I want to make sure you can see everything. So I go to File, Set Project. I choose my activity file folder. And I go to File, Open Scene. And this one is going to be the shape change activity. So choose that one, shape change activity, and open it up. And again, if you've set your project, you'll see the image planes in there. And if you don't see the image planes, you know what's happened is you need to set your project again and open it. So again, we don't really use our reference images in the perspective view. Our orthographic view is where we make our bread and butter here. You'll see that if you press 4 for wireframe, you can see the objective. The green color is the objective for the shape change that we want. So again, it's sometimes hard to see through the geometry to the image plane behind. What is it I like to do? X-ray. X-ray. Where's that located? It's under shading. So I'm going to go to shading, and I'm going to choose X-ray. And now I can see both the geometry as well as the image behind, just a little bit easier. All right. So left to right in terms of complexity, here's my easier adjustments. The harder ones are later on. So if I take a look at my shape, P cubed 4 in this instance, it looks like my shape is hitting everything that I'm getting from my reference image, the silhouette that I'm going for. So in terms of my front view, it looks like I've hit everything I need to. But should I use another view, or am I okay with just the one? I want to check my other views. As a modeler, you are always checking more than one view to make sure you're doing everything you need to do. I'm going to put on X-ray here, and I look at this object. Looks good in my side view. Looks good in my front view. Okay, that's actually done. I don't have to do anything to that one. Make sense? Shape and form. So let's go to the next one. Here's my object. It seems to be matching in my front view, but that's not the whole story. I got to use my side view also. So if I come over here and I come to my side view, oh yeah, look at that. It dives in like this. It's got to come in. Now luckily, I've got an edge in here that I can use to manipulate the shape of my object. So what I'm going to do is go to component mode. How do I go to component mode? Right mouse button over the object, right? Right mouse button gives me this component menu set as well as this fun one down here, but we're going to concentrate on this. And I choose vertex or vertice. Now I can select the vertice, and then I have to get my move tool out to actually move it. Now, as a common mistake, many times a modeler will grab a vertice and move it and go, wait a minute, for some reason Maya is duplicating vertices. I did something wrong. Oh shoot, I hate Maya, it's the devil. But what's happening here is I'm actually grabbing only one vertice on my object. Do you see how if I grab just one and move it in, I'm leaving one behind, and that's the one that I'm looking at right here. Do you guys see that? I'm moving only the one in the front. And that's why this looks like a duplication, but that's not what's going on there. So what I'm going to do is, rather than do a point selection of the one vertice, I'm going to do a marquee selection. And that's, if you recall, that's when you create a drag, left mouse button, drag, and create a selection box. And then everything in that box gets selected, which means the front and the back are selected simultaneously. Then I use my move tool and I move it into place. And now I'm getting the shape change I want. And it's happening in the front and the back. You have to think in 3D. So here we go. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to bring this one in. Vertex mode, marquee select both vertices in the front as well as the back. And I'm working with all my views visible so you guys can see what I'm doing. You're really going to want to work in a maximized view. So hit the space bar and make that view nice and big because it's way easier to work with. And then I'm going to use my move tool and move it into place. And again, if it looks good in my side view and it looks like it's matching, and it looks good in my front view, it looks like it's matching, then when I go to perspective, that was the objective shape and form. I hit it. That's exactly what I wanted. Does that make sense?
Hell yeah.
There we go. Thank you for playing. So, here's where it starts getting crazy. I've got different objects that I'm trying to hit the shape on. They get more complex, obviously, as we go this way. Some edges create shape. Some edges hold shape. So what I want you guys to do is, and Brian and I are going to walk around while you're doing it, select the components, and you can work with edges or faces or vertices, whatever you want, and try to make the geometry we gave you match the silhouette, the green part. And you don't have to do anything other than either translate, rotate, or scale. You don't have to do anything other than that to hit those shapes. So Brian and I are going to walk around, and we'll see how you guys do. Manipulating the shape of the object, utilizing the components. And as always, I'll be doing the first 3 rows, and Brian will get the others, because if I go out of range, my headpiece studs do not work right. And that's problematic for the lecture. Yeah, okay, that's all right. Struggle is okay. You learn from the stuff you get wrong. So do your best. Let me see you move the components. How do you get to component mode? Oh, you're good. Stay in this view here. How do you get to component? Right mouse button over the geometry. Remember that? Make sure you're over the geometry. Choose your components. Okay, and then grab them. Or you can drag select them. You can point select them. It's up to you in terms of how you select them.
Yeah, I did.
No, go to component mode. Try again. Vertex. There you go. Now grab the vertices. They're not selected right now. Grab some. There you go. Now move them. You see how that starts changing the shape of the object?
Yeah, but like everything else, I didn't put the braces, and then it just came out like
That's okay.
a cylinder, but then I had like these parts come out.
That's all right. I want you to try. Don't worry if it doesn't turn out okay, because we're going to work on that. That's what we're here for. We're practicing. Good, good. All right, start working on those other shapes. Nice job. How are you doing? Well, they look, this one and this one, they are the same in terms of the silhouette. If you look at this one, and you look at this one, those look identical. So what does that tell you? The same shape no matter which way you look at it. You know what I mean? So like, if you look at this thing, look at it from the side, right? Now look at it from the side. Is it any different? Any different? Okay, so that object must be cylindrical in shape, right? Because it looks the same on all sides. Does that make sense? Yes.
How do you like change the view of the
spacebar? Yeah, spacebar will take you into whatever window you want to be in.
No, I got the side view. What if I wanted that to be like a back view or a top view?
Well, in terms of top view, that's that one.
Well, yes, but like say I was in this way, and I wanted like this to be the front, not to be the side. How would I?
Oh, if you can go to the panels there and just choose the different windows you want. The orthographics are top, front, side. Yep, you're welcome. Good, good, awesome. Very nice. How you doing?
We don't know why, like, that one stays there and it's down, and then once you try to bring that up, that one goes up or down.
Well, it could be that you selected the image plane and moved that, or you physically moved the geometry. I would be inclined to believe you moved the image plane by accident, because, number one, if you notice, they're not level anymore. So hit Z and see if you can get the image plane to pop back into place. Yep, keep going.
There you go.
Z, 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 Z. You reached the low limit of your Z's? Okay, no worries. It looks like it's lined up now. Here, select that piece of geometry. There you go. So now this one looks like it's a little bit high. So select the image plane and then move it down until it lines up with the geometry.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
I have problems with the memory of my laptop.
With the who?
With the memory of
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
yeah, with iCloud, since the iCloud memory, for some reason, all the takeout are not saving and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I used to live right beside the can I go to my house to get out the drive I can do that. I can save everything there.
I would say let's do that before lab. But for right now, I want you to be here for the information because I don't want you to miss anything. But just realize that you won't be able to save anything. But what you may want to do is go through your computer and figure out if there's some stuff in there you really don't need to have on there that you can delete.
Yeah.
Because once they fill out, they don't work as well.
The problem is with iCloud.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'd rather you were here for the information, but before the lab, definitely, because you're going to need to save stuff. Oh, good. Yeah. No, you're doing terrific. Very good. Very nice. Excellent. It's all relative. It depends on what you've done previously. How you guys doing? Good? There you go. We're moving components around. Very good. Let me see how this row's doing it. Good, good, excellent. Killing it. Very nice. Good.
Object you can move
Good.
right? And then it moves up from there. You can move
Cool. All right. All righty, guys. It looks like you guys are doing pretty well with this. For the most part, it looks like you guys have pretty much wrangled in the ideas of moving vertices to change the shape of the object. But let me just show you a couple of hints to help you out, because this is going to, again, it may adjust your thought process a little bit, but I think it's going to help you a lot in terms of your modeling skills. Now, first things first, I'm looking at this first object here, and I can see that the object kind of goes out, and then the object comes in. And a couple of you, I saw you guys go into vertex mode and grabbing the vertices and trying to move them, and you're getting, you know, sort of, oh, what's happening here? This is, you know, it's kind of doing it, but that's probably not good. And you're right, that's probably not good when that's happening. And if I go to my geometry and take a look at what's happening there, you can see, oh yeah, yeah, something's not right, but at least you're moving components and you're trying to hit shape, and that's definitely what I was hoping you would do. But here's what I want you to think about. I can grab an entire row of vertices if I want to, and by marquee selecting, and I made the background black on purpose so you could see the marquee selection box. When I select marquee style, everything all at one time, again, I'm looking at all the vertices on that row all the way around. I can then go to my scale tool and scale from the middle using that middle cube. And you see it brings them all in. And I want you to notice that when I'm over here in this view, it's happening here too, right? All at one time. And that's because I am scaling from the middle. Now what's weird about why am I using scale to move things? Vertices are the smallest unit of your polygon object. They're the smallest thing, right? Think of them like the molecules of your body or the atoms of your body. You can't really make those any smaller, right? So point being, when it comes to objects, if I grab several objects and they can't get any smaller, if I scale them, they will actually move towards each other if I'm scaling towards smaller, or away from each other if I'm trying to make them bigger. Does that make sense? They don't change size. They are not size specific. So if I scale these guys towards each other, they're going to, or if I scale them towards the smaller, they're going to get nearer to each other. All right? So I can grab this row of vertices and scale them away from each other. And you'll notice in 2 moves, I completely created the shape that I needed. This is what I wanted. And as you noticed, if the object looks the same in both views, very likely it's a cylinder, because you're looking at something that's the same on all sides, right? So let's take a look at this next one. In this instance, I've got some of the shape I want, but not other parts of it. So if I change my vertices here using my scale tool, I lose sort of the upper part of this object, and I don't want to do that. But if I grab the lower vertices and scale them, this row of edges holds the shape that I have. This row creates the change in shape I need. So I can scale those guys away from each other. And again, when I do it, scaling from the middle, it happens at both sides at the same time evenly. So I don't have to worry about make the adjustment in one view, make the adjustment in the other view. Okay? Now, it gets really interesting when we get to this object. I've got a holding shape edge here. I've got to change the shape edge here. I've got a holding shape edge here. And I got to change this shape edge here. And what this is helping you start to realize is if there's a change in shape, I'm going to need components in that area to do that. Does that make sense? Because this won't happen if I don't have an edge here, and if I don't have an edge here, and here. So in this one, again, I can grab the vertices, marquee style selection, and just bring them in. This one holds, and this one holds. Again, I can do the same thing down here. Does that make sense? I can also do even faster. I can select this row of vertices and holding shift, select this row of vertices. I can use the scale tool to bring them closer together, and I can also scale to kind of push them away from each other. All right, even faster. I've got an even faster way to do that. In this instance, if you look on your keyboard, you see the key called Control. If I hold down Control and I manipulate Y, what I'm telling Maya is adjust the other 2 axes. Ignore the one I'm manipulating and do the other 2. So it will scale in both Z and X simultaneously. And I can do it in one move. Does that make sense? And that's just the efficiency of the adjustment. None of those are wrong. They're all fine. But there is a speed to the thought process before you use the tool. And I'm just trying to demonstrate that for you. Again, there's not a right or wrong because they all were the same shape. But one of them was definitely quicker. Make sense? Okay. I'll give you another couple minutes. I want to see you make those adjustments this time the way I showed you. If you didn't do that the previous time, just play with it a little bit. Get the feel for scaling vertices away from each other. And to be honest with you, do you have to get vertices? No, heck no. You can grab edges as well. If I double click on an edge, it will grab that entire edge loop. And I can do the exact same thing, holding Control, and scale my edges. It's doing the exact same thing. I'm just moving components. Okay? So let me give you a minute to play with those ideas, because I want to see that you're getting that gist, and then we'll move into some more manipulation and some more fun tools. We are being constantly manipulated, Brian. You just have to walk out your front door or turn on your TV. I do. I listen to my mom as much as I can. That woman knows what she's talking about. Hold Shift to add to your selection. There you go. Now Scale Tool. Very good. Speedy adjustments. See, you're getting better already. It's okay to make a mistake. That's what we're here for. These exercises are meant for you guys to make mistakes with because you don't care about them. They're throwaway, right? When you're building an object you actually care about, you're terrified you're going to mess it up. So That's why we have these things for you guys to beat up on. Good, good. How you doing now? Excellent. Good. Killing it. Nice. How you guys doing?
Good.
Terrific. Very nice. Oh, we're building more funky stuff. All right. Good, good. Good. Nice. All right. They got this up here. All righty, guys. Good job. Good job. See, all of a sudden, what seemed like nightmarishly complicated, nah, not so bad, really. You just have to see how to work it, and then it's all good. Aha, polygon faces. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about polygon faces now. Periodically we will talk about the mesh, because not only are we using tools and creating art, we're trying to create what we call mathematically sound geometry. And the reason I term it that way is because, yes, we're creating art, but we're using math to do it. And just like 1 + 1 has to equal 2, when we are creating geometry, we want the math to be good. We want positive math that is correct. The reason being, when your geometry has issues, problems, or complications to it, you have an unsound, mathematically unsound piece of geometry, and it can lead to problems with your computer because it is, again, using math to create art. So if there's issues with your geometry, it can lead to files crashing. It can lead to Maya's inability to save. It can lead to rendering issues. When other people load your files into their computer, it can cause problems as well. And basically, since we are one part of this big team of people working on whatever project we're working on, if we are creating unsound geometry, we are messing other people up. Does that make sense? So what we want to do is make sure we are creating mathematically sound geometry, because then all of our tools work, our application has a lot fewer issues, we don't have any problems with rendering, and other people can use our files and have little or no trouble whatsoever. And that's what you want. That's a happy, productive team. Make sense? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that geometry. Again, we got to think about the math part of the art as well. So in terms of polygon faces, each based on your object, we describe them in one of three ways. We have quads, which are four-sided entities. We have tris, or triangles, and we have n-gons. We're going to discuss those in terms of how they make up a mesh. Now, in terms of a piece of polygon geometry, this is a four-sided face up on top here, meaning there's four edges that define that face. And if you look at the object, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. That is a quad, or four-sided model. When we have a model that's all four-sided, no matter what it is, we refer to that as being fully quadded. Everything on there, 4 sides. Now, this face here is called a tri, or a triangle. You've probably heard this a lot in video games in terminology, because when they model, they literally model in triangles on purpose. That's the goal. But if you look at this piece of geometry here, this has 3 sides, this face. 1, 2, 3 sides. Tri, or triangle. Ideally, I'd like you to have your models be composed entirely of four-sided faces, mostly of four-sided faces. Either of those are fine. Some triangles are okay in the right place, right? And as you get more advanced in your modeling, you'll start to see where and when you can use triangles. As I said, if you're modeling assets for a video game, it's all triangles. But the point is, some triangles in this class are okay. Does that make sense? Now, where we get into trouble, and it doesn't matter what discipline we're talking about, is when we have more than 4 sides. 5 or more, we refer to it as an n-gon. And this is where we're getting into mathematically unsound pieces of geometry. Now, this face looks like it's got 4 sides, right? It's a square. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This vertice right here makes that a 5-sided face, even though it is square in shape. Does that make sense? This is an n-gon. And again, the issues that we run into with n-gons, files crashing, files unable to save, tools not functioning properly. Why isn't the tool working? Because you've got a face with more than 4 sides on it. It's mathematically unsound. The tools are math. If you've got mathematically unsound geometry and you're using math tools on it, your equations aren't going to add up. Therefore, the files don't function properly. Does that make sense? It's like trying to build a house with poor quality wood, right? If it's wet and knotted, it's going to start breaking apart when you put a saw on it. If you hit where a knot is on a piece of wood, it splinters and stuff goes everywhere. Poor quality foundation, bad building. Make sense? Same thing holds true with geometry. We're trying to create mathematically sound geometry so that everything works well. Now, the good news is, because I know you guys are going, uh-oh, I'm trying to build everything out of 4 sides. You know, a cube is pretty easy to see which faces have more than 4 sides or fewer than 4 sides. How do I figure out if I'm looking at a 3,000 zillion polygon dragon? How am I going to find the bad geometry in there? And the good news is there's actually a tool in Maya to help you locate the problem. You have to fix it, but Maya will show you where the issues are. Does that make sense? So thank goodness for that. We'll talk about that next class. But for now, rest assured, it's not just you. Maya is in there too, trying to help you find the problems so that you can create mathematically sound geometry. Because pretty is a big piece of what we're doing, but it's got to be functional also, or we're not helping out anybody. Does that make sense? Where math and art combine. All right. Any questions about the idea of 3 sides to a face, 4 sides to a face, or more than 4 sides to a face? No? How about my digital friends? You guys okay? All right. As long as it's sinking in, I'll take mesmerized. All right. So next thing we're going to talk about is what I call the big 3 tools. And your question is, what are the big 3? Here they come. They are the multi-cut tool, the insert edge loop tool, and the extrude tool. Now, from the previous exercise, you guys have started to come to realize, oh, if I'm trying to change the shape of the object, I need components to do that. And if I don't have enough components or not components in the right place, I can't really change the shape of the object. So what I need to learn how to do is create more components so that I can manipulate them. Well, the big 3 tools, these are the guys that you're going to use to create more components. And as a result, have more vertices and edges to work with, and therefore the ability to change the shape of an object. And you can put them wherever you want using these tools. So we're going to go through these 3 tools, and I'm going to demonstrate for you how they work and what they do. And then, of course, you know there's going to be a fun little exercise for us to do together. So again, just pay close attention, take good notes, and let's talk about how these 3 tools work and what they allow us to accomplish. All right, let me get Maya up here again. I'm just going to create a new scene here, and I'm going to create a cube. I'm going to hide my grid just because it makes it easier to demonstrate. So I go to my show menu and uncheck grid, and now I don't see the grid there. These screens can have grids if they want because they have their own show menu. So if I want the grid in here, I just make sure I turn it on. They've all got their own. That one it was on. I turned it off, and then I turn it back on, and lo and behold, it works. So just like your TV set, turn it off, turn it on, all of a sudden better. All right, so let's say, for example, I'm trying to build a cute little house, all right? All right, and let me all right, so let's say I'm trying to build this cute little house here. And what I've got to work with is this cube. Because again, if I was going to draw this house, well, I did draw this house. If I drew this house, what did I start with? A cube, right? So if I'm going to model it, same thing. But the problem I'm running into is I can't really create that roof with what I've got because I don't have enough components. So for example, if I take a look at this top here, you know, I can try to scale the vertices, right? Because that was the answer on the last exercise. But then I'm getting, you know, pyramids, which is great if you're Mayan or Egyptian or what have you, but that's not what I'm looking for. I need this colonial style home, so that's not going to work, right? I can grab this face and I can tilt it, you know, give me like a California style home, you know, or, you know, make an A-frame house, which is great as long as you don't have a lot of stuff for your attic, good in the snow, but again, not that nice colonial I'm looking for with a second floor. So in terms of this house, I don't have what I need, so I need to add some components to this object. So one great tool for adding components to an object is the multi-cut tool. Now the multi-cut tool is located under Mesh Tools in terms of your menu set. So if you click on it with the left mouse button, you will see the multi-cut tool. And the multi-cut tool, as I said, is fabulous for creating more components. This tool works on edges, so that's what you're going to be working with in terms of the creation of more components. And the way it works is this. I'm going to go to Mesh Tools and choose the multi-cut tool. And as soon as I get this tool in my hand, you'll notice that my cursor looks totally different now. Now it kind of looks like an X-Acto knife, right? Before it was an arrow. Pay very close attention to what the tool looks like on your interface, because sometimes you're selecting things with your selection arrow, and then sometimes you've got a tool in your hand, and you want to be careful that you don't have a tool in your hand and you think you're selecting, but you're actually using a tool. Does that make sense? Like if I'm like, hey, come here, and I'm trying to get your attention, and I grab your coat and try to pull it towards me, right? Hey, come here, right? And then I like, oh, wait, let me get my knife tool because I'm trying to cut an apple. Oh, hey, you know what? Come here. And now I'm sticking you with my knife, right? So make sure you know what's in your hand before you do something. So pay attention to the cursor because it tells you what you got. So where I've got a multi-cut tool in there, and see it looks like that. Looks like an X-Acto knife, and that's what it does. It is an X-Acto knife. It allows me to cut into my geometry and create additional components. It works on edges. So in terms of its use, I'm going to come over the edge, and you see like these crazy like lightning bolts shooting out of it, and like, oh my goodness, what is it doing? The way it works is you go to an edge, and you click with the left mouse button and hold it down. And that creates this cute little blue dot. And as long as I hold that button down, I can slide that cute little blue dot anywhere I want. That little blue dot is a baby vertice waiting to be born. Yeah, isn't that cute? That yellow number, you get a blue one. In terms of that yellow number, that's just the percentage along the edge that you're on, 0 versus 100. Does that make sense? So that's what that number is. Now, in terms of its placement, again, as long as you hold it, you can move it around. If you hold Shift down, it actually moves in 10% increments so that you can find exactly the 50% mark. Do you think that's an option of the tool? Yes, it is an option of the tool that you can adjust. So if you wanted to make it 3% or 2% or 49.8%, you could do that. So I get it to the 50% mark and I let go. Now that vertice has been planted. It hasn't been born yet, but it has been planted. Now I can go to the opposite edge. And again, click with the left mouse button and hold, or hold Shift to get my 10% increments. All right? Now, once I get my vertices where I want them, if I can even make another one if I want to, I can click and go down here. I can click and go over here. I can do whatever I want. If I create a vertice that I don't want, if I hit the delete key, it will go back one step, almost like an undo, right? But I've got this edge up here, and I say, you know what? I want this one. I'm good. This is it. I hit Enter on my keyboard, and then Maya cuts that edge into my geometry. So now I have it. I didn't have it before, but I do now. So now I'm going to put down my X-Acto knife, because you can see it's still in my hand, right? Because what I want to do is manipulate this edge. I want to move it, but I got to put down my X-Acto knife. So now I'm going to choose my move tool. And then I'm going to go to edge mode. I'm going to select the edge. And then, using my move tool, I'm going to manipulate it. And that gives me the house I need. All right? Very straightforward. But the reality is, until you've done it, you don't know. That's why I show you first, and then you're going to do it too. All right? Now, here's my house. I'm so excited. I finally got that 2-story colonial I've always dreamt of. But in terms of my house, I'm meeting the art side, but what's the problem with this house? It's bad math, right? This is mathematically unsound because this space here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. That's a no-no, right? So I've got to fix that. Guess which tool is amazing at fixing n-gons? The multi-cut, exactly. So I go to my mesh tools, I get out my multi-cut again, and this is the way I'm going to fix it. I'm going to click on the edge and hold, and I'm going to drag my cute little baby vertice until it gets stuck in the corner. It won't go any further. All right? The reason I do that is because I want those 2 vertices to glue together and become one. If I let go too soon, they're not going to attach to each other, and I'm not solving the problem. I'm creating more bad geometry. So I'm going to drag until it gets caught in the corner, and then I know it's hooked. Then I let go. Then I come down here, click and drag, and again I can use my shift to find the 50% mark. When I want the edge to be cut into my geometry, what do I press? Enter. Cuts it in. So now this has 4 sides, and this has 4 sides. Make sense? Oh, what about this side? How many sides on this? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. That vertice makes this 2 edges, not 1. So I got to get that tool out, fix it, and again, you know, if I had to fix those other 2 sides, I'm going to have to fix this side too. Click and drag, and then I hit enter. So now I've created the shape I wanted, and I have mathematically sound geometry, Gesundheit. So some edges create shape, some edges hold shape, and some edges maintain quadness. So even though that middle edge doesn't really affect the rest of my model, I need it to make it mathematically sound. Does that make sense? I don't delete that out of there. I need that edge. Mm-hmm. That would have given me, you're correct. I could have put an edge in here, and that would have left me with all 4, but then this would have been a 3-sided. So if my goal was 4-sided on all my faces, that wouldn't work. So I'd have to do what I did here and run an edge down the middle. Does that make sense? Again, what do I need it to do? Are triangles okay in that particular position? Things you have to ask yourself. Does that make sense? Now, I've got this house, and that was using the multi-cut tool. So this time, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to use a different tool. This tool is called the Insert Edge Loop tool. As its name implies, it inserts an edge loop. So, again, in terms of where it's housed, it lives under the mesh tools, and you'll notice that it's just a little bit above the multi-cut. And this tool also works on edges. So what you do is you come to an edge, and you see it looks like a paper airplane, the Insert Edge Loop tool. All right, so this thing works on edges. You click on an edge with the left mouse button, and again, hold. And when you hold it down, it creates this dotted green line. As long as you hold down that left mouse button, you can move that edge anywhere you want. I can't go around the corner though. I'm on this edge. And what you do is get to the middle and just let go. All you got to do, let go. And like a lightsaber through butter, it just cuts right through the whole thing. Now, once I've created those edges, again, I have to select an edge and using my move tool, manipulate to get the shape change. The only difference is I don't have to quad this after the fact. Does that make sense? I don't have to go back and fix it. Now you might be wondering, is there a step thing where I hold it down and it magnetically goes in the 10% increments or automatically finds the middle? No, there is not. I wish. I've been sending letters to Autodesk. They are not answering. Now, you can trick Maya into doing that. There is a way to trick Maya. But in terms of those edge loops, you can always use your tools to make sure you line things up. And that's what grid lines are amazing for, lining things up. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, as I said, it's a cool tool. I wish they had that function in there because I would love that too, but they didn't put it in there. I think they do it just to spite me now. But that gives you that house. It's the same house, fewer moves though. Does that make sense? Now, something to think about. Why would you use one over the other? The multi-cut tool will let you put edges wherever you want to. The multi-cut tool will let you create bad geometry. You can create n-gons with that thing. Maya could care less. Does that make sense? It is reckless. You can click all over it. Maya's totally fine with that. The insert edge loop tool will only cut in a series of edges between two other edges, a loop of edges. And the insert edge loop tool will not cut faces that have fewer than 4 sides or more than 4 sides. Does that make sense? The tool won't function properly because it's mathematically unsound. It won't work. Does that make sense? So here's an instance where if there's a problem with my geometry because I've got n-gons, my tools aren't working right anymore, which is super frustrating because you can't figure out why stuff's not working. That's the problem. Does that make sense? So why do we want to work in 4-sided faces? I know everything's going to be fine. Triangles here and there are okay. Insert edge loop tool is not going to cut a triangle though. Does that make sense? So there are reasons behind this wackiness. Yes? Absolutely. If you trick it, you tell it to create 2 edges at the same time, but you only give it 1 edge to create, and then by math, it divides it right down the middle. So let's now take a look at one more tool, which is super fun. And this is the extrude tool. Everybody loves the extrude tool. Modeling in Maya is the extrude tool. Does that make sense? This one is a lot of fun. It's a little bit challenging to work with, though. It's going to take some practice. Luckily, we have some exercises to work on that. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, in terms of the extrude tool, I just have to show you because it's funny. You can extrude vertices. I can grab just one vertice, edit mesh, and I can extrude it. All right? Yeah, exactly. What is that? I mean, other than an n-gon. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what happens when you extrude a vertice. You can also extrude an edge if you want to. Edit mesh, extrude, and what you end up creating is a single plane of geometry, a single face that is like paper thin. And to be honest with you, if you're modeling paper, that's really the only thing you would model that would have one face on it like that. Does that make sense? Really nothing else in our world. Even if I was doing, you know, the edge of a desk or an actual box, I would put some thickness on that because there is thickness to it. But in terms of this face, that's what it does. Now, if you're wondering, well, can you extrude more than one at a time? Absolutely. You can do an extrusion of more than one object at a time, and it'll create both. All right? Now, here is where you're really going to use the extrude tool. And this is really what it was designed for, and that's faces. This is 99.9% of the time. When you are extruding, you're going to be extruding faces. Now, in terms of extruding the faces, what you want to do is grab one face, and you go to Edit Mesh and choose Extrude. And it basically, I like to think of the extrude tool like an additive tool. It's kind of like clay. You have some material, and you're trying to add to it. Does that make sense? So in terms of the extrude tool, I can create more geometry out of the geometry I already have. And I can also change the shape of that geometry. And I can do additional extrusions. I can do an extrusion where I'm not going in or out, but creating a smaller face inside of a larger face. Do an additional extrusion, and I can even go interior to make an opening. Do another extrusion, make a smaller face inside of a larger one, and then extrude back out again. Do another extrusion, pull it out. What's that? Yeah, I'm forming Voltron. Absolutely. Dun, 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 dun. Shape of, but you can see, actually, I'm making a dish so that I can finally afford satellite. All right? But what you can see is that in terms of complex shape change, you can do a lot really quickly with the extrude tool. Does that make sense? Modeling in Maya is the extrude tool. The other tools complement, but really this is the Mac Daddy. And this is one we need to learn how to use. So I have an exercise for you guys to do where we're going to demonstrate the big three tools. Yes, you knew it was coming. And I also have some exercises for just the extrude tool because it is tricky. Does that make sense? So first things first, let's do the big three tools demonstration. You've already set your project, so Maya knows what you're working on. So I'm going to go to File, Open Scene, and I'm going to choose my big three. And what you see is I've got three little houses here, right? That nice colonial, and I've got Pizza Hut. And you can't mess with those, but those are your goals, okay? So this is what I want you to do. Create three cubes. 1, 2, 3. So now I've got these three cubes to work with, and I want you to use the multi-cut tool in the first house, the insert edge loop tool in the second house, and the extrude tool in the third house. And they should look just like the examples I gave you. So in case you want to see it again, under your mesh tools, go to your multi-cut. And I'm going to use my shift key to get that right down the middle. Select that edge and raise it up using my move tool. And again, I know that's an N-gon, that's okay. I'm going to come to my insert edge loop tool for this one. Mesh tools, insert edge loop. Click and drag. And then I'm going to grab just the edge on the top and move it. And then I'm going to come to my last little house here, and this is the extrude tool. Select the face on the top. Do the edit mesh extrude. And what I want you to do is first grab the arrow, because the arrow is talking about movement. So pull the geometry up. And then you'll see that there's some cubes right next to the arrows, like the scale tool, right? Make sure you're touching the cubes, not the arrows, because they are definitely two different parts of the same tool. And you can scale in one side and scale in the other side, and then suddenly you've got that more narrow roof. Or, you guys remember when I was talking about how you can get two sides to scale at the same time? What was the trick for that? Hold Control. Go to Control and use the axis that you don't want to be affected. So I'm going to hold control and manipulate Z, and that will move X and Y simultaneously. And that guarantees that they scale the same amount on both sides. Does that make sense? And then ultimately, that will yield you those 3 houses. So Brian and I will walk around and see how you guys are doing. And again, we're going to have more practices with this stuff. But I just want to kind of get your feet wet a little bit now so that you can get more comfortable with these guys, because we are going to be modeling with these guys a lot. All righty? So let's see how we're doing. That's okay. Relaunch it. It's okay if Maya goes night-night. Mesh tool. Multi-cut. There you go. There you go. And if you create one you don't want, you hit delete. There you go. Good. And then you hit enter when you're done. Good. Now that edge you got to move. Yeah, don't forget to hit enter, because that's how Maya knows you're done drawing lines. Yep, big 3 activity. That's the name of it. I should probably call it 3 houses.
No, I don't know what I did.
Oh, good. Yep, multi-cut for the first one, insert edge loop for the second. How's it going? Yeah, it's moving in 10% increments. I think you already have a vertex in place there, and it's going halfway between those. Does that make sense? So the first time you were using the tool, you created a vertex and you clicked off into space. So it did plant that vertex there. It's there. Does that make sense? Yep. How you guys doing? Good. 2 of 3 houses so far. I like it. Good. Time for the extrude tool, the most intimidating of the tools. Like the face on top. Good. Excellent. How you doing? Good. Now all you have to do is go to edge mode and select the edge and move it.
I'm still a little confused. Because I like things perfect. And if edge loop does not have like that middle thing, it'll annoy the heck out of me.
No, that's okay. I'm going to show you how to use the snapping tool to make that snap right onto that grid line. But I would tell you right up front, perfection is very difficult to pursue.
Yeah, oh, really?
Yes.
Why do I don't understand how to use edge loop. So I click insert edge loop. Why is it not showing? I don't have it loop. I don't have it.
Now go to the edge and click and hold. Click on it. There you go. Yep. Yep, no worries. That's why we do these exercises, because you have to get a feel for how the things work. And we practice together. Sure.
I forget what I was.
Select the edge, and using your move tool, move it. You know how to do this. Move tool. That's not your move tool. That's your move tool. See? Easy peasy. Yep. No, looks good. Looks good. Fabulous. You killed it. Oh, you don't have to save any of these. These are just so that you and I both know you know what we're talking about. No, not the in-class exercises. No, the skill checks you turn in. The weekly turn-ins you turn in. You hit extrude in object mode. You extruded every face on your object at the same time. So what you're going to want to do is delete that cube. Just go to object mode. Right mouse button over the geometry. Choose object. Upper right hand corner. Now hit delete. Just make a new cube. And this time, just grab the face on top. Face mode. Grab the face. There you go. Now do the extrusion. Good, good. Yes. Did you? Let me see. Fabulous. You got it. Yes.
It's not letting me click my faces I want.
Sure. Go ahead. Make a new cube. You probably did something to it.
I did. It loaded.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Delete it. Make a new cube.
And I thought I broke Maya easily.
There you go. Draw a cube. It's okay. It's all right. All right. Now zoom in on that one. There you go. Now go to face mode. So, see? And that's why I was saying when you create mathematically unsound geometry, weird stuff starts happening. You know what I mean? That's why we got to be careful. We're not just making art, but mathematically sound art. Everything works better when the math is good.
How do you get out of the extrude?
Oh, just click off into space. Yep, you're out of there. Good. Good, good. Yep, just grab that one edge on top. Go ahead, click it, and then move it. There you go. Perfect. How are you guys doing? Uh-oh, the extrude tool. Are you scared? Don't be scared. You want to grab faces, though. There you go. Make sure you get just the one. Hit Z, because I think you have more than one face selected there. If you press 4 for a second, I think you'll see you get the one in the back. So just select the one face on top. Now, are you moving it, or you want to do an extrusion? Extrusion. So we got to go to that tool, right? So edit mesh, extrude. Now grab the air. See? And then use the cubes to change the size. Good, good. How you guys doing? Good. Don't be nervous. It's all about playing. That's how you figure out how to do stuff. Make sure you're extruding faces, not edges, okay? Because I think what you did was selected edges there, and that's how you ended up with that. If you need to, just delete that in object mode and make a new cube. Don't be afraid to do that. Because sometimes you have you create bad geometry and tools don't work. Yes. How'd it go? They call me Steve. That's my name. Awesome.
And I did it by accident. I was in the middle of doing this one.
That's okay. Sometimes accidents are good. I want to see you do that one. Don't be afraid. Face mode. Grab the face. The other two are great.
I know. Like, also, the feature, because I did the, splitting in half.
Yeah.
But it gave me the line in the middle.
Right.
Well,
multi-cut here, you hold shift to get the 10% increments along the edge.
Oh, so for the first one, it doesn't matter if it's
No, that one's fine. Yeah, if you fixed it, that's to your advantage, because you already know how to do that. Did you? No, that's totally fine. It's something you're going to have to do anyway.
So, yeah, I did everything. I even, like,
Yeah, now you just got to go to edge mode. Edge mode. Yeah. Select the edge. Select the edge. You're in vertice mode.
Oh, I am?
Yep.
How do I?
Right mouse button over the geometry. Choose edge. Now select the edge on the top.
Right here?
Mm-hmm. Here, hit Q just to get away. There you go. Now grab that edge on the top. Both of them. Now move tool. Go to the move tool. There you go. And there. Now move it. Yeah, no worries. It's hard, isn't it? You got it. That's why we practice. All right. Looks like you guys did really well with this exercise. Now, as I said, we have more than one exercise to do with the extrusion, because this one is, it's on the complicated side. So really, I have a good tool for you to work on the extrude. And the reason this exercise is really helpful is because usually what happens is when I first show people how to use the extrude tool, they go, oh, that's the greatest tool ever. And then what happens is no matter what you're doing in Maya, you think the solution is extrude tool. And the reality of the situation is when you're modeling, sometimes you just want to move components around, and sometimes you want to extrude. And knowing the difference is what's important. Does that make sense? Because remember, you got to think of vertices like money. You want to build an object and spend the least amount of money. It's about efficiency. So if I don't have to extrude, I don't want to do it, because that's going to cost me some more vertices. Does that make sense? So learning the difference between when do I extrude and when do I just work with the components I already have is what this next exercise really helps with. So we have another exercise that we're going to do. Again, it's in the activity folder. And this one, and just like all exercises, if you want to work on them again in lab or at home, that's what they're there for. Use them as much as you want. So I'm going to go to File, Open Scene, and I'm going to get my, which one do I want? No, I want my Manipulate Component and Extrude Activity. This is the one with the longest name on it. Manipulate Component and Extrude. Now, in terms of this activity, what I've given you is two pieces of geometry. One is the objective, so the lighter colored, the yellow is the goal, and the darker or the green one is what you have to work with. So we're not going to be doing a whole lot in terms of, you know, do we extrude or do we use components? So in looking at this object, I can see this object is rounded and this one is square. So the problem I'm going to run into is, obviously, something needs to happen here because this doesn't even look remotely like that. But if I grab an edge, both of them in this instance, and I move them, you see, oh, that's starting to round it a little bit. So it wasn't like extrude tool was the answer, because I can round it and I'm not using the extrude tool, I'm just using what I already have, right? No need to spend money on more vertices. But watch this. Again, it looks a little awkward. They're not lining up great. It's not perfectly cylindrical. And again, I don't like to use the word perfect because perfect is very seldom attainable in any capacity. But you can see that that doesn't look very neat and organized. So what I'm going to do instead of moving those things one at a time, what if I grab them all the corners, because nothing that is cylindrical has a corner on it. I'm going to grab all the corners on this bad boy. And do you remember how we could move things evenly? What did we do to do that? We scaled. Using what key and scaling technique? So I'm going to get my scale tool out. I'm going to hold Control, and I want these cube edges to move on both X and Z, but not Y. So I hold Control and manipulate Y, and they move in together. Isn't that neat how that works? And it's very fast and easy. And then now I've got that object. No extrude tool necessary. I didn't have to do anything. What I already had did the job. Does that make sense? Okay. Then we look at the next one. This is what I want. This is what I have. Does that make sense? Now, if I look at this object, I can see I've got some shape change, right? It's going from a bigger cube to a smaller one. So that I know I'm going to need an edge to create that change in shape. So here's what I'm going to do. In this instance, I do need the extrude tool. I don't have enough geometry to make this shape out of that. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to face mode, because this is what we typically extrude with, and I'm going to select all four faces on the top of this cube, individually, but all at once, holding Shift. Right? Now I'm going to go to, excuse me, Edit Mesh, and choose Extrude. Now, with the extrude tool visible, What was that trick we learned for scaling things evenly from all axes? Hold control and manipulate what? The one that you don't want. So I want it to move on Y and I want it to move on X. So I hold control and I manipulate Z. And what that does is it creates a smaller face inside of a larger one. It's not up or down. If you look at this thing, I didn't go in or out at all. I just created a smaller face inside my larger one. Now, if I just pull this up at this point, I get sort of more like that third house that we built. But that's not what I want. I want a nice flat area and then a sharp transition. So I don't want to pull this thing up again. What I want to do is another extrusion because I need this edge right where it is. So I go back to Edit Mesh and I do another extrusion. And this one, I pull straight up. And then that gives me that sharp transition, that sharp shape change. Now, using just those two ideas, and those are the only two you need, you can build these other objects, right? So what I want to see you do, Brian and I will walk around while you're doing it, I want to see you make the changes to make the green or the darker cubes look more like the yellow ones. By whichever means, is it a component or is it extrusion? All right? And let me give you a little hint. This last one, I've got an interior extrusion. How do I make openings on jars? How do I make openings on beer bottles? Interior extrusions, right? Tops of soda cans. These are all things you're going to be building. So you need to be able to turn this into that. That's going to be important. All righty? So Brian and I will scoot around and see how you guys are doing with this one. And we will see how it goes. Yeah, it's got the longest name, Manipulate Component and Extrude Exercise. Yeah, tricky. Make sure you're grabbing the edges on the corners. Yes, because that's what you're trying to round, right? Think of it like sandpaper. If you wanted to turn a cube into a cylinder, you would sand those corners, right? So grab the corners. Right there. You got the edges? Go to edge mode.
Oh, I want to.
Yeah, go to edge mode.
Edge mode.
There you go. Now grab those edges, and the one in that other corner. You got to hold Shift to add to your selection.
Oh.
Yep, Shift adds to selection. Yep, so far so good. Keep it up. You're doing well. Right? Yep. Hit Z so it goes back into the shape it was in before. Let me see. Yeah, you got them all. Now you want to use your scale tool, though. Remember, we were using that to move with. So hold Control. Oh, hit Z. Hold Control, and then manipulate Y. Okay. Does that make sense? That's scaling in all axes except Y. So we're ignoring Y. How you guys doing? Oh, very good job. I like that.
It's not moving smoothly.
Oh, that's okay. I think you turned on one of your snapping tools. Just click on that magnet. There you go. It'll stop doing that. What's that? I think you might have some faces on the back of your object selected. Tumble around to the back and take a look. And the reason, oh, hit Z. There you go. Now tumble around, take a look at the back. There you go. See that? And the way I had a feeling that that's what happened is whenever you do something, Maya creates a pivot point for it. And that's where the tool is. Exactly. The pivot point was in the center of the object, which is telling me you didn't have just the ones on the top selected. Does that make sense? So if you look, that pivot point will give you a hint sometimes and let you know, oh, you selected something you weren't planning on. How you guys doing? Good, good? Yeah, that's okay. That's why we're here. We practice, practice, practice. It's all learning. There you go. Now hold Control and manipulate Z. Grab the cube of Z. There you go. Yay! There. Now do another extrusion and pull it up. Good job. Yes. That's okay. You don't have to apologize. Okay. Hopefully my earpiece won't go out on me. Uh-huh. Oh, okay. All right. What are you trying to do? Okay, well, you're in a orthographic view. They don't rotate. You want to be in perspective if you want to tumble around. So, well, see, that doesn't say perspective, right? So that's not going to do it. But if you go to panels, perspective, and choose the perspective camera, that's a camera you can tumble. Does that make sense? Okay.
So this one.
Mm-hmm. Yep, if you select it and press F, that will frame it. Select the object. Press F. Ooh. Right mouse button and choose object mode. Right mouse button, there you go. Choose object in the upper right hand corner. Select it, there you go. Now press F. Boom, now we're on that one.
Okay, so it was mesh tools.
Well, hold on, you don't want to extrude in object mode. Or which tool do you want to use?
I was just trying to make house.
Oh, okay, okay. So insert edge boot. Mesh tools. Insert edge boot.
It wasn't with.
He's having trouble with the multi.
Oh, it depends. Oh, multicut's the one you want to use. Okay. Yeah. Click. Click, and then hit enter. Now you go to edge mode and grab that edge because you need to move it, right?
Right.
So right mouse button over the geometry and choose edge mode. Select it. Whoop. Hold on, hit Z. You still had your tool in your hand. Yeah. Get the move tool. Excellent. Select that edge. Now it looks to me, you see how when you're selecting your object, like the whole thing is turning yellow?
Yeah, that's what.
You have accidentally activated your soft select by hitting the B key.
Okay.
And that's grabbing more than one thing. So now grab the Y-axis and pull it up.
Yeah,
That was it.
couldn't do it.
No worries. Yeah, the B key is very close to the space bar. That happens. Not a big deal. And if you haven't seen it before, you wouldn't know, right? Good job. How are you guys doing with the open container? Good? Excellent. Yes.
I did it and then undid it and can't remember what I did.
Okay. Well, that's why we write stuff down. But if you select the faces and then you do an extrusion to make a smaller face inside of a larger one, edit mesh extrude. Now hold control and manipulate Z. Oop. Hold control and manipulate Z. Hold control and manipulate Z. Cube, not arrow. There you go. Oh yeah, no, that's cool. What you've got turned on there is you've unchecked keep faces together. So what's happening is now the faces are acting independent from each other. So what you want to do is hit Z to undo all that. Z, Z, Z. There you go. Now, go to the extrude tool and make sure to check on keep faces together. It's in the options. Yeah. So each face won't be independent at that point. They behave as one. All right. Nope, they look good. Nope, you did great. Looks awesome. Good job. All righty, guys. Let me have your attention back up here. It looks like you did pretty well with this exercise also. I'm very happy to see the level of success. Again, any exercise we do that you feel like, you know what, that could have been smoother, I could have been a little bit more at ease with it, less, you know, luck, because sometimes you're like, you're playing with Maya and you're like, oh, it did what I wanted. Oh my goodness. It's amazing. Yeah. But soon it will actually do what you think it will do every time. But it will take practice. So just keep using these exercises, keep working with them, and they will teach you the skills that you need. And this is a great one for the extrude tool because it really kind of puts you through the paces of what you need that thing to do for you. Now, what I want to talk about now is, let's take a look at, oh, incidentally, let me just show you this real quick. And I think this might be of some use to you. I created a video of the modeling process, the way it works. I don't know if have you guys ever seen Bob Ross do a painting demonstration? That guy's awesome. Everything's a happy cloud. But sometimes I think if you see somebody do something, it's easier for you to kind of understand the process. So please watch the video that I made for you, because basically I talk about modeling from two perspectives. One, plan of attack. If I get an image and this is what I want to build, what are my thought processes before I even start touching buttons and keys? Does that make sense? So please watch that video. Definitely if you're a beginner. If you've already, got a good feel for how modeling works, then, probably not as big an issue for you. But I would highly recommend you watch it if you're unsure. If you're positive you don't need it, no big deal. And it's not that long. But what I want you to do is see the thought process of how you attack the building of an object. Because what typically happens is, okay, I know how to use the extrude tool. I know how to use the tools of manipulation. And then I turn you loose and go, okay, guys, it's time to build something now. And you sit down and you're like, where do I start? That happens a lot. So knowing how to take that first step is really going to be a big help for you. So watching that video that talks about plan of attack is really going to help. There's a second video where I actually go into actually modeling the object, and you can watch that too if you want, just to kind of see how that goes down. But definitely plan of attack is a big help on first steps, because sometimes it's getting started is the hardest part. So that will really help you out in terms of finding your way. But what I would like to get into now is talking about your skill check. Now, your skill check is going to be modeling the jar. Remember, we did a block out of the jar. That was skill check 2. Well, skill check 3, now we're going to model the jar. And we're going to use the same file to start with, jar asset start. Only this time we're not blocking it out. We're actually going to model the thing. Okay? Now, using the skills that we've learned in terms of manipulation of components and the extrude tool, insert edge tool, and multi-cut tool, that's all you need to build this object. Does that make sense? That will do it. I'm going to demonstrate it for you so you can see the skill check in action, but you will be doing this as well. And again, this is what you'll be turning in on Saturday. Now, in terms of the skill check, of course, this is a skill check file, so I have to make sure I set my project to my skill check folder. So File, Set Project. I go to my skill check files, and I just select the outer folder. I don't have to go inside of that one. An important difference when you guys are building assets, when you go into your asset folder and you go into your level 1 folder, you'll notice there's a bunch of objects. You have to actually set your project to the object you want to build. Does that make sense? It's a little different from the activity files and a little different from the skill check files in that each of these files is its own self-contained entity. So you have to tell Maya, I want to build the ladybug. So you choose that folder specifically. Does that make sense in terms of the difference between the activities and the skill checks? Okay, so if I want to build an object, I have to set my project to the specific thing that I want to build. But in this instance, I want to use my skill check files because this is a skill check assignment. So I select just the outer folder. I don't have to go into it because these are all the specific folders to the little things that Maya needs and I need to make this project. So I only need to get the outer one, skill check, set. And then I go to File, Open Scene, and And again, I'm going to start with my jar asset start. And again, because I've set my project, my images appear in here. Now, in terms of modeling this thing, again, you're going to get this from my plan of attack video. The first thing I need to figure out is, where do I have changes in shape, right? So, changes in shape in my object. I see, here's a change in shape right here, right? So I'm going to have to build that. So there's like an inward part, an outward part, and an inward part. That should kind of remind you of some exercisey things we did, right? It starts off straight, and then it kind of goes out. So that's going to be a change in shape. That's going to be different, all right? All kinds of details in here. Okay, so I know I'm going to probably need some edge loops in this area, because we talked about the fact that some edges create shape and some edges hold shape. And again, some of them just maintain quadness. But so I'm definitely going to need some edges in there to accomplish this stuff. All right? So now I'm starting to see in my mind's eye what the edge flow of this object is going to need to be. And again, this is going to help me model it because I can already see where the edges are going to have to go. And I apologize for this in advance. I'm so sorry. But you guys are going to start looking at the world around you and seeing the edge flow that it would take to build the object. And I'm sorry, I apologize. That's going to be a thing. But you want to be seeing the edge flow that it takes to build the object before you even start. Then I look at the object and I say, okay, now let's start talking about and thinking about the number of pieces I need. So how many pieces do you think I need? One, right? And why is it only one? It's one object. It's made of one material. There are no moving parts. All the stuff we talked about in determining the number of parts, right? This is one piece. It's a piece of ceramic. Okay, so I know that. Now, what do I need it to do, right? That's our all-encompassing question. What does this thing need to do? Well, I'm going to be building a scene, and it's going to be, I'm going to be bringing a bunch of pieces together and making a final scene. And my final scene is going to be, I'm going to be pretty close to these objects based on my camera position. So I'm going to have to build a good amount of detail in this thing, try to make it as realistic as possible because my shot might be quite close. So I have to make sure that this thing is looking pretty good. Make sense? Okay. So I know what I need it to do. I got a good idea of how many parts it's made of, and I've already started visualizing the edge flow it's going to take to build this thing. Okay, so now let's start working. So I go back to Maya. If I was going to draw this thing, what would I start with? A cylinder. So if I'm going to model it, same thing. So I create a cylinder, right? Move it into place. I need to make it bigger because it's not big enough. And try to match it to my image plane. Again, I like to be able to see the image plane through the geometry. You can use wireframe by pressing 4, but I prefer X-ray mode because I can see through it. And I can see just how close I am in terms of the size of this thing, make sure it fits right. Okay? Now, it's not quite long enough, and I could use that scale positively and negatively, but if it's driving you crazy, you could go to vertex mode, grab just the vertices on the bottom, right? Not grabbing anybody else, just the guys on the bottom, and I could just move them down. Grab these guys and just move them up. I stop right here, though, because I've got a change in shape, right? So I know I need edges there. So something's going to have to hold this shape. Because if I take this up here, right, let's say I move this up into this area, and I scale it out from the middle, like I know how to do, I've hit this, but I've lost that. Does that make sense? So I need to do something here. And I could do a couple of different things. I could take this all the way up to the top if I want to, like that. And then using my Insert Edge Loop tool, I could drop an edge in here, right where I see that shadow. Drop an edge in here at the top, right? And then I could put another one in here, right through the middle. Scale this one. And that's going to give me the change in shape. It's going to give me the holding shape. I could even put more edges in there and round it a little bit and try to match it better, right? Put an edge in here. Round it a little bit. Put an edge in up here. Round it a little bit. And then I could take these guys, flare them out. Move it down. That's one way to do it. Let's say I didn't like that. I don't want Insert Edge Loop tool. There's got to be another way. There's always another way. What if instead I want to use the Extrude tool? Right? This time, I'm going to grab the faces on top. See what I have selected? Just the guys on top. And I can do an extrusion. Edit Mesh Extrude. Pull it up. Holding Control, flare it out. Right? Holding Control, bring it back in a little bit. There we go. Do another extrusion. Pull it up. Do another extrusion. Pull it up. And this one, hold Control, scale it in. Do another extrusion. Pull it up. Again, hold Control, bring it out. Does that make sense? Same thing, almost identical edge flow. There's no right or wrong. You could build that either way. All right? Now, time to make the opening in the top. Right? In this one, you would do the same way pretty much as you did that extrude exercise, right? Do another extrusion. Hold Control. Make a smaller face inside of the larger one. Now, if I just push this straight in, it pinches. But it's not a sharp edge on the edge of that jar, right? It's sort of rounded. So instead of sharply pulling it in, I'll do another extrusion. Edit Mesh Extrude. And then this one I'll bring in. Well, how narrow do I make it? Let's come to this view. That's what X-ray is great for. I can bring this in, hold Control, scale it in. That thickness is the same on both sides. And if I take this straight down to my jar, you know that's not what it looks like on the inside. Right? It doesn't pinch like that up there. So I leave that up there, do another extrusion, and just bring it straight down. And I modeled the interior of this jar because it's a jar. I need it to have an interior. Otherwise, it's not a jar, right? It's a paperweight. So, point being, just using those tools, I made that jar. And again, if I want to round that lip a little bit, great way to use my Insert Edge Loop tool. Does that make sense? With just those three tools, you can build just about anything you want. And that's why I show you these three first. And again, there's not a right or a wrong to how you model, but there is faster. Or you're always trying to do that, because that makes your job easier and your life easier when you can do things a little bit more quickly, or not necessarily quickly, but maybe smarter, so that you're not working as hard. You know what I mean? You can fill a bucket using a spoon, but it's way easier to use a hose. So being smart about how you approach things can change how your work life is. All right? So this would be your skill check number 3. Model that thing. Make sense? Okay. Any questions on what we talked about today or the skill check that you will be doing, hopefully this evening? Anything? That was pretty straightforward. Did that make sense? Nothing, no voodoo there, right? Okay. So the one little bit that you've got to work on is the finesse, the touch. How do I get it to do that? Because it's not always that easy. The comparison that I always use is learning to drive stick. Any of you guys ever learned to drive stick? Any standard transmission people out there? Yeah, fun, right? But remember that first day on stick? Was that smooth and glorious? No. Like, I'm glad this is something that's called. But when you're learning stick, it's like, ah! And if you were on a hill, forget it. You know, just, no, please, just shoot me now, because it's going to stall. But the point is, there's a feel to driving stick, and every car is different. Where does the gas go on, and where does the clutch let go? And knowing where that feel is to be able to smoothly go between the gears, it's a finesse, it's a touch. You have to learn that feel. And like I said, every car is different, because you can drive a Porsche and you can drive a Jeep, and it's not the same thing. I like the Jeep better. But point being, it's going to be different. So you got to learn that feel. The extrude tool, the insert edge move tool, heck, all of Maya's interface, it's a touch, it's a feel. And you got to learn that. And you can only get that through practicing. So the more you practice, the smoother it'll be, I promise. And then, much like stick, driving is a much more enjoyable experience when you're driving stick. It's way more fun. But you got to get over that rough part. So learn on somebody else's car. Don't do that to your car. Anyway, so point being, we are now moving into modeling. You have the tools you need. Now you just need the experience so that you can build the objects you want to build. So you'll be choosing 2 objects from your level 1 asset folder to model. And the jar does not count. You can't turn in the jar as one of your weekly turn-ins. This is that. Narrow the 2 cross. Does that make sense? No skill checks can be turned in as weekly turn-ins. You have to model different objects. But you will learn some really important skills from the jar. That's why it's a skill check. Yes? Oh, okay. No worries. All right. Any questions about what it is you need to do? When's the skill check due? Saturday at midnight. A great rule of thumb for turning in work that I would suggest to you is about an hour to 40 minutes before something's due, you should start the upload process. Don't work right up till 11:59 and try to upload, because typically something goes wrong. There's always a technical issue, and it always happens at the last second. So if you start early enough, you can get everything down, get everything together that you need, be organized, name things properly, do all the little things that you need to do when you're doing things right, and then upload and not be too stressed about did it upload properly or what have you. Because you can turn in more than one version of the model. So like if you turn one in and you're like, oh, wow, no, I just figured something out and I'm doing it better now. Well, turn in the better version. If it hasn't been graded yet, put the newer version in there. We will grade the most recent one. So feel free to upload again if you want to. But your better bet is to not wait until 11:59 to start trying to upload stuff, because you're going to forget things. It's going to be sloppy. It's not going to look like you want it to look. And most likely the stuff that you turn in at 11:59 is not going to get a great grade anyway. When you are calm and composed, clear of mind and action, you do much better. When you're stressed and freaking out, that's when not your best effort comes forth. So your better bet, 40 minutes to an hour before it's due, start getting your stuff together, figure out what you need, start naming things, make sure you're going through the self-grade if it's the weekly turn-in, and make sure you're hitting all the things you need to hit in order to get a good grade. Does that make sense? Just good strategy. And I got to be honest with you, everybody in this school turns in at 11:59. So, that's going to choke the server big time, because everybody likes to work to the last minute. Crazy people. I guess we like the excitement. But point being, take it easy, get it done a little early, and if you want to submit again because you did a better job with a little bit more time, submit again. That's fine. but waiting till last minute typically doesn't go well. All righty? All right, last chance for questions. Skill check is due on Saturday. When's your weekly turn-in due? Monday. Okay, so we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about that, so we'll get together before that's due. 2 grid units on the image is equal to 1 inch in Maya. Absolutely. So if you're just using the picture, that's what you want to do. If you're in my local class, you have the awesome opportunity of actually measuring the object you're building. And we have a ruler and everything, so you can figure out how big to make it there as well. That's correct. Yep, you could take a ruler to an object, and if it's 5 inches tall, it will be 5 grid units in Maya. Straight up translation. It's just that images they have smaller grids. I can, absolutely. Yes, I'd be more than happy to look at your file. I just want to make sure that I don't have any general questions, because I like to get those out, because if you have a question, probably 5 other people who are thinking the same thing, or if you ask a question, somebody goes, oh, I didn't even think of that. Think that person asked. I'm trying to get the general ones out online and local, so you guys let me know if there's something you want to know. I'm about to sign off. Lecture 3 going once. Lecture 3 going twice. Sold October. All right. No. It's always at twice. All right. So good luck, everybody. I will see you on Monday, and we will delve into some more modeling tools as well as the cleanup tool, which is really going to help us find bad geometry so that we can fix it. We will be using tools that we learned today in order to fix geometry in a lot of instances. So good luck, everybody. I will see you on Monday. Get those skill checks done and in on time. Awesome. Great. Thank you very much, guys. Good lecture.